Nitrogen cycle. Let's just keep talking about it because who doesn't love nitrogen? Again, you've got bacteria from the nodules. And these are on legumes. These are on your bean plants, things of that nature. They're not on corn. The plant supplies the carbohydrates for the bacteria. The rhizobia supply the nitrogen. So it's a symbiotic relationship. It requires little or no additional nitrogen to fertilize those types of plants. So you're not putting nitrogen on your soybean plants. Your soybeans are actually providing nitrogen for your next crop. There are species-specific rhizobia. So alfalfa rhizobia, for example, doesn't affect if you had a pea crop after that. It wouldn't be the same type of rhizobia. Again, you're essentially converting organic to inorganic. It's done by microorganisms, mineralization, and modification. So plants can take up the ammonium form of nitrogen. I don't even know where to move me so that you can see. Nitrification is ammonia converted to nitrate here. And then the reverse, mineral nitrogen converted to organic nitrogen, which is immobilization, which is where the plant cannot use it, and it usually leaches into the groundwater, and it's bad for the environment, so we don't want a lot of immobilization. Or even if it doesn't leach, it's just sitting there, and it's not able to be used by the plant. So there's several things that can happen to it, but by and large, we don't want a lot of immobilization. We want that released to the plant so we can use it. Okay, so ammonia manufactured for fertilizer. So we figured out, hey, if we could just manufacture fertilizer, that would be fantastic. How does the bacteria do it? We are probably going to need some kind of high temperature, high pressure, and a catalyst. Welcome to the Haber-Bosch process. So this may be the thing that has changed the world more than almost anything else. Essentially, we figured out how to make nitrogen fertilizer available to plants, and it's a big deal. And I think there's some ethics there that need to be discussed at some point because it's a big thing talking about the ethics of it. So yes, we can feed millions of people. So many people are not going to die of starvation because of this process. We can make nitrogen fertilizer, and that's amazing. Also, we can make nitrogen fertilizer, and we put just a ton of it, as you can imagine, everywhere. And now we have a huge nitrogen problem, which is polluting the Mississippi River, which is creating a deadload zone in the Gulf of Mexico. And you're like, well, why are nutrients bad? Nitrogen's good. It makes plants grow. Yeah, it does. It makes a ton of algae grow in the ocean, and that takes all the oxygen away from the fish and the shrimp and everything else, and it creates a dead zone of just like algal blooms, if you want to think of it like that. So it is called a hypoxic zone, and that is because we created this process, and that process essentially made it so that we couldn't function as well in the oceans, because now we have nitrogen everywhere, all this available nitrogen that we can put in water. I'm going to put these also in the link, so you're going to watch those right after this video, so you know how it happened. But essentially, it's a process like this that compresses it and allows us to take in methane, water, air, and produce from that ammonia, liquid ammonia. The Haber-Bosch process, methane is the energy source, CO2 is a byproduct. It's very energy intensive, and it's sort of expensive, but it's also worth it because it helps plants grow in places where they would not maybe normally grow. It produces urea, ammonium nitrate, and ammonium sulfate, which can be synthesized from the anhydrous ammonia, which is the pure form. Okay, again, nitrogen processes. Carbohydrates is energy, CO2 is the byproduct, 1 atmosphere pressure is what this takes, ambient temperatures, and bacteria is the catalyst. The conversion of the nitrogen gas to ammonia in legume nodules. This is the actual process by which the nodule, this is the fake little bacteria that lives in the plant. I liked this cartoon. He's just sitting there eating some sugar and spitting out ammonia, and I think it's delightful. He's like, hey, thanks for the free carbohydrates, have some nitrogen. It's a great symbiotic process. Everybody's happy, the plant's happy, the bacteria's happy. We're happy because plants grow. Okay, nitrogen deficiency symptoms. This is going to be an overall yellowing of the lower foliage. See how these yellow ones, these are yellow and not these? That's a dead giveaway that it's probably nitrogen, and usually it stunts the growth. Correcting is adding fertilizer. So you can add ammonium, you can add nitrate fertilizer, you can add urea, you can add manure, you can add whatever you want, and it will prevent your nitrogen deficiency. Let's move on and talk about phosphorus. Phosphorus turns this delightful purple color when it is deficient. Phosphorus is found in ATP, the P is phosphorus, NADPH, phospholipid bilayers, DNA and RNA. Generally, it's the second most limiting element. So it's the most likely. We typically apply as fertilizer to almost anything NPK, because those are the big three. If you don't have enough phosphorus, your corn is going to look like this, and your houseplants are going to look like that. Again, much of the phosphorus is tied up in soil organic matter. Many phosphorus compounds are only slightly soluble. Actually, when I went to college, we didn't actually know that phosphorus was soluble at all. We didn't know that dissolved reactive phosphorus was a thing. Because of the way the phosphorus ion binds to soil, we thought if you didn't lose soil, your phosphorus is always on that soil molecule, and they always move around together. But as it turns out, over time, this molecule, as it's bombarded with water, over time, the phosphorus will separate from the soil. Even though it's chemically not advantageous, it will over time do it, and you will have dissolved reactive phosphorus called DRP. And that is phosphorus that is not bound to a soil molecule, which is sort of a new thing in terms of research. So phosphorus requires managing the soil pH because applications of fertilizer on the wrong pH will not be available to the plant. Again, there's fertilizer is usually required. The mycorrhiza fungi can actually be used as part of this fertility system, and you also get a lot of phosphorus from manure. The mycorrhiza fungi, it's on in rocks. Its mycelia acts like root hairs, so it increases the volume and the places that the pea can be accessed. It's associated with many plants, and it's available commercially. You can actually buy it, and we can do some in the greenhouse, and we can put it on roots and see if it grows better. It's kind of a fun experiment to do. Again, the deficiency is in those lower leaves because it's a mobile element. It's dark green, like a not usual green color. Like this is not the normal color that it should be. It's red or purplish. The plants also become spindly if not corrected, and the way to correct it is fertilizer or mycorrhiza fungi if available. Potassium. This is needed for osmotic control of the stomate, so the opening and closing of the stomate. As you can imagine, that is pretty important for plants. So if you're not doing it, you're going to see some deficiency pretty quick, and that's usually a potassium deficiency. This, you could confuse it with nitrogen, but you can see that it's the outside of the leaves that are turning yellow, not the inside, and that's just going to look a little bit different. You have to kind of look at them side by side to know which one's potassium and which one is nitrogen. Potassium is not as difficult to manage as nitrogen and phosphorus because it is retained in the soil. It is a pretty plentiful mineral source, and it doesn't really need any rock phosphate is basically what we put on. You can just get phosphate. It's pretty cheap. Again, deficiency symptoms in dicots. This is a dicot. Everything that's not a grass. You will see the lower leaves yellowing because, again, it's mobile, and browning of the leaf margins. So that's what it looks like. In monocots, the tip chlorosis, so the tip will turn yellow first, and it'll spread along the margin, just like that. And you just need phosphorus fertilizer. You need potassium fertilizer. Calcium. Calcium has a structural role. It gives pectin a stable structure. So when your plants are getting all mushy, if you're watering them, it could be a calcium deficiency. And it also tends to look like that. That's what a calcium deficiency looks like. It's not a common problem in most plants. It can be a problem in a rapidly growing tissue just because the calcium isn't being transported quickly enough. If your plant is getting all spindly and growing, you might see some calcium deficiency just because it hasn't caught up with the source sink. Most commonly seen in end rot in tomatoes, so that's what a tomato with calcium. Tip burn in lettuce, and bracts development in between poinsettias can sometimes turn yellow if there's not enough calcium. It also is like twisted leaves. Iron deficiency, most commonly the chlorosis there.